Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining the Cougs and Sports podcast. My name is Ryan Pettit, and my guest today is someone that I met last year at the Sport Management Career Fair in Everett, Washington. He is a former D1 football player that played in the Paul Wolf era and is a Washington State University sport management graduate. I would like to welcome Andrei Lintz. Andrei, thank you for joining me today and taking the time to chat.
Ryan, what's up, man? Thanks for having me. Super excited to be part of this and excited to talk with you.
Thank you. So, although I already gave a brief insight to who you are in the introduction, would you like to explain a little bit more in depth about your time at WSU and the journey of your career?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I was at WSU. I did 6 years, man. 6 years in Pullman. Long time. I was there 2008 to 2014. I got my bachelor's degree in sport management in 2012, and then I stuck around for a couple more years and get my master's in education, I guess, master's in education, but specializing in sport management. So from the School of Sport Management. So really familiar with the faculty there. I think Dr. Crawford's still there, Dr. Leachin, still kind of keep in touch with a couple of them. So some great people. But yeah, I went over to Pullman. It was a football scholarship under Paul Wolf. So that was Paul Wolf's first recruiting class. And then I redshirted my first year. So I redshirted that 2008 season. And that was pretty cool because that afforded me a fifth year on the end of my career. So I graduated in 4 years and was able during my fifth year to start my master's degree, my grad school coursework, which I had planned. I plan on getting my master's degree, at some point. But it just kind of worked out perfectly where I could jump right into it into my coursework right away and still play football and still kind of have that whole football scholarship side of it. So that was the fall of 2012, and then spring of 2013 was my first year of grad school. And then my final year in Pullman, my sixth year, I was able to GA in the student athlete development department, which kind of specializes it's a part of the athletic department, which specializes in helping graduating student athletes kind of take that next step into their careers. As a lot of former athletes know, there comes one day when it's just like, hey, like you can't play anymore, whether it's football, whether it's track and field, baseball, basketball, anything. There comes one day when the game says, hey man, you're done. So you got to do something else. So, and that's tough for a lot of people that are, 22 years old, that have been wanting to play, D1 sports their whole lives and then, get to the professional level. But at some point that they end. So it was cool for me to kind of help with that department as I was making that transition too. And graduated in 2014. And I still come back. My little brother, he's a senior at WSU right now. He's a sport management major. So I still go back pretty often just for football games and visit him and everything. So still kind of remain tight with the Pullman community and the Cougs and all that stuff. And like I said, still keep in touch with the professors there in the sport management program, and then students like Ryan. We met at the career fair in Everett that Dr. Crawford set up. I think it was last year or sometime. And just events like that. Any opportunities like this, any opportunities I have to give back to the school and the program that did so much for me. I jump right on it. So yeah, really excited for this new venture that you guys are starting and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's great. So then when you were talking just about you helping athletes kind of in that your transition, from grad school, and then you went pro, you tried out for the Seahawks. And then after that you worked for the Pac-12 and then Seafair and then 710 at ESPN is where you're currently at. How did you deal with the uncertainty of your career in that stage of grad school, trying out for the Seahawks and then Pac-12? Because something that's been troubling myself and a lot of others graduating and a lot of people that have already graduated is the uncertainty of the future of athletics and our careers. So how did you deal with that kind of uncertainty?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one thing that I just want to share with you guys is is you're definitely not alone. I mean, kind of that it's such a crazy time to be kind of, like I mentioned before, is you're graduating, you're kind of 22, and your senior year is such a great year in college, and you got all these big goals, and it's huge, it's a huge accomplishment to graduate college, and to get a bachelor's degree or to get a master's degree, or kind of finish your coursework. I mean, that's such a huge accomplishment, and you're kind of riding this high, and you're kind of leaving Pullman. Everybody's happy for you, graduation pictures and graduation parties and all this stuff. And it's like, man, like I'm kind of ready to attack this world and ready to do great things and all that stuff. And then you go out in the real world, and it just kind of smacks you in the face, because it's like, I mean, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to start your career. It's hard to get a job that you think, that kind of carries your value. Because, you come out of, I mean, I was just like anybody else graduating college. I was like, hey, like I'm going to graduate college and I'm going to get a job right away. And it's going to be salary job, and it's going to be making, 50, 60, $70,000 a year. Like, man, like I made it, and it's not like that. It's tough. It's really tough to get a job, especially in sports. I mean, those sports jobs are, number one, they're few and far between, right? So like, not everybody, there's not a college campus in every single town or every single city. There's not a pro team in every single town or every city. So those jobs are so far, few and far between. And number two, just the competition for those jobs is so extreme, because everybody wants to work in sports. Everybody wants to have that Seahawks logo or that Mariners logo or, that Cougar logo, on their shirt. And there's such a high competition that, not only does that, kind of bottleneck and not allow people to get it, but it also drives down salaries, because there's a lot of companies that, you work in sports right away, and hey, you got to work 60 hours a week right off the bat, and you got to make, minimum wage. So it's a tough kind of juxtaposition, because you graduate college, you think you're gonna be on top of the world, but then like you hit the job market and you're like, oh man, like this is a real competition, real dog eat dog. So that uncertainty, I mean, definitely don't get discouraged by it. For me, it was definitely, a lot of uncertainty. And for me, I mean, I kind of took advice of Dr. Crawford, is just kind of like, hey, took internships. I try to do a lot of different stuff and just kind of get my feet wet with a lot of different things and see, hey, do I really like it? One thing that, she mentioned right away is, if you want to work in sports professionally, you got to be able to move around a lot. You got to be able to move around the country a ton, just because, like I said, there's not a job, in every single town as an athletic director or, whatever you want to do. So I took, after my playing career was done, I had internships. I had a couple senior open golf championship operations internships in Oklahoma and Nebraska. Like you mentioned, I worked for the Pac-12 networks in San Francisco. I was an intern for the CrossFit Games in Los Angeles. Kind of all around the map. And I'll be honest, like those jobs I was making, like minimum wage, maybe at the very most $12, $15 an hour. Like, I wasn't doing it for the money, but I was doing it for the experience, and I was doing it because like, hey, like, I want to go there and I want to see, do I really like it? Do I like what I'm doing here? Do I enjoy what I'm doing here? And I really enjoyed what I was doing. But at the end of the day, it was like, hey, the one thing I miss being around my family, being close to my family. I miss being close to my friends that I grew up with. And I grew up just about an hour and a half north of Seattle. So I was like, I got to find a way to get back to Washington. I got to find a way to get back to Seattle. So, but within that, I mean, I would have never known that if I hadn't tried it out. I really enjoyed what I was doing, but it was like, hey, like, I just don't think that living across the country and traveling, kind of, these different positions is for me. But I would have never known that if I hadn't tried it out. So obviously there was a lot of uncertainty there, but it was also kind of fun because it was, hey, like I'm young and I get to travel and I get to go meet new people. And, I was interns with a lot of different people that were in the same my position, new graduates. Some were still even in school. Some were still trying to figure out what we were doing. So the coolest part with that is, we still keep in touch, a lot of them, and a lot of them ended up working in sports, and a lot of them didn't end up working in sports. But I guarantee you, they're all happy for that experience and at least trying it out and at least, taking the risk and seeing, hey, do I really like this? Is it something that's for me? If it is, yeah, great, let's do it. I got a leg up, I got a head start. And if not, at leleast you tried it, and at least you can kind of go back and figure out, kind of what you do like. But dealing with that uncertainty, I mean, you got to realize, it's there and it's going to happen. And especially now more than ever, with COVID and all this stuff, I mean, now more than ever, but, there's still opportunity to put yourself out there, and really, try it out and see if it's something that you like and something that you want to do.
Yeah. The uncertainty and then the anxiousness and the anxiety that can come with that, the am I going to get a job in sport is, was this worth it? It comes a lot, especially right now of, thinking ahead, applying to 50 to 100 jobs in a, 4, 5, 6 month span, and then not getting a single response or getting maybe a couple interviews. It's difficult, and it's definitely weighs down on you, on your morale as well. And for you, as in a position that you're in, where you've been with, 710 ESPN for quite a few years now, yeah. Does that uncertainty and that anxiety of your job and like the future of sports, does that still weigh on you, or is it kind of gone away?
I mean, 100% it weighs on you. I think, I think the only constant is change, right? And it's crazy because even in our industry, things change all the time, and it's nuts because that's just kind of the way life is. Like for instance, a couple months ago, we went through a brand new, on our sports radio station here, 710 ESPN in Seattle. We went through a brand new lineup change, so we kind of shuffled some hosts around. Some hosts ended up not being on the air anymore, and shows got completely moved around. So it's kind of one of those things where, change is just going to follow you everywhere you go, and you just kind of have to adapt it and how you deal with it, and you have to just kind of meet it head on, because if you don't change, if you don't adapt, then bad things are going to happen to you, right? So the kind of uncertainty, and I can speak to that, going back to, like you said, applying to different jobs. I mean, shoot, before I got this job, before I had this job, I was working for Seafair. That was my first job, and that was in Seattle. So that was after I moved back home after those internships. But when I decided to move home, I lived with my parents for 6 months, and I just applied for places. I try to apply for 3 to 5 jobs every single day. And like you said, I mean, you just felt like you were just sending your resume and your cover letter into a dark abyss, and you would never even hear back. They wouldn't even acknowledge you. They wouldn't even say that, hey, we even received this. So that was definitely, frustrating, that weight on you, but that's just kind of just the way it is. It's just a fact of life. So, kind of that perseverance, that's what that taught me more than anything, is that perseverance and stick to it. And hey, like, saying, hey, this is actually what I want to do, looking for opportunities and looking for networking too. So yeah, just dealing with that change and dealing with that constant. I mean, it's always going to be there. With our industry specifically, I mean, even just like with anybody else, last year with COVID and still going through it now, I mean, that literally, the world got flipped upside down. And, we had these huge goals for our company and for myself personally last year that, it was around this time, because January and February were going really well. And then March, kind of everything hit, and, sports, like, as a sports radio station that didn't have any live sports to cover for 6 months, I mean, you can imagine what that did to our ratings. And me selling advertisements, I mean, we got hit with a double whammy, because not only did we have not a lot of sports to talk about, but also our advertisers were also getting hit too, because just because their businesses were being closed. So it's like, hey, how do we do the right thing with our advertisers, and how do we take care of them, and how do we kind of manage the situation that we're in right now? And it's like everybody said, it's been unprecedented. So I mean, even kind of now more than ever, it's kind of that change and dealing with it, and just rolling with it, and kind of that adversity and attacking it head on.
Yeah. And with the, the sports landscape changing so much as it already has, hopefully when everything goes back to some sort of normalcy, how do you think it will change for good, the sports landscape? Just, after everything's changing up, there's no fans in the stands for pretty much any sporting event, maybe limited in some areas of the country, but just the entire industry, especially like your positions or other positions, how will they change, and who will benefit from that and who will not benefit from it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think honestly, I think media, kind of the media properties, it's going to be on the cutting edge. Obviously, as you've seen over the last 6 months, since August, when the return of MLB and the return of NBA, those are the first two major sport leagues, and at least in the United States, to come back. And then right after the NFL, I mean, there's no fans, so there's 60, 70, 80,000 people that can't attend the games. So for radio, it's been good for radio just because they either have to listen to the games on radio or they have to watch the games on TV. So I think as people transition to hopefully vaccine rolls out, and as people kind of get back into going stadiums, limited capacity, and then hopefully to some capacity of what it was. There's still going to be people that are hesitant, or that don't want to attend games in person. I watch highlights or I watch movies of stuff before COVID, and it's just like big crowds and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that's so nuts. That's just crazy just to think about. Like, that was just a year ago, and like, when will we get back to that point? And will we even ever get back to that point? There's a lot of unknowns, but I think kind of the media companies and kind of their versatility of getting their messaging and getting their games and their broadcasts and their content delivered on so many different platforms and so many different people. That's such a high point right now, obviously, with a lot of people cutting the cord, cutting cable and satellite and all that stuff, and going over the top and streaming and all that stuff, and they're accessing their content in complete different ways. So the media companies that are willing to adapt and reach new users and reach them in new and creative and unique ways are going to be the ones that benefit. And the ones that suffer, the constituents that suffer, are going to be the ones that fail to adapt. So it's changing landscape. I think even before COVID, you saw a lot of streaming. Amazon was picking up different Thursday night football games. I mean, you saw a game on Nickelodeon, a playoff game on Nickelodeon last month. And they're, and that was genius because they're accessing new fans and building a new fan base. So, I kind of watched a little bit of broadcast. I don't know if you did, Ryan, but it was kind of comical just because they were, the comparisons that they made, but it made a lot of sense too. So, just kind of finding new ways to adapt. And even, for sport management grads is kind of think of those new ideas. A lot of companies are looking for people that are, new thinkers and can think digitally and can access, kind of that millennial crowd and Gen Z, and finding ways to reach them, and through, whether it's social media or streaming platforms or all that stuff. I think, right now digital is definitely the cutting edge. It's the way to go. And, companies are looking for people that are digitally minded and digitally focused, that can think outside the box, that can think differently, to reach, younger and different and newer audiences.
Yeah, that Nickelodeon game, it was the Bears and it was Bears and someone else, but
Saints. It was Bears. Yeah,
it was Bears Saints. And just like the amount of effort, just graphic design and multimedia, and just like that effort that went into that broadcast looked so difficult, but it just I thought it looked interesting. Some people were making fun of it, but like the slime zone and stuff, every time a touchdown was scored, it would just like slime in the end zone. And then the broadcast itself was more about teaching people.
Yes.
And I just, even though I'm only, 4 years into learning of the sport world and the sports industry, it's so obvious what they're doing of, they're trying to gain that new audience. They're trying to teach kids and teach people that aren't as educated about football about it, so they can, they'll start to gain, oh, well, I'm interested in sports now. I'm 8 years old and I had no idea about the NFL, or I had no knowledge of it.
Mhm.
And so I watched this game and I started to learn more. And then now once I'm, a teenager, I'm going to start watching football on the bigger networks because I know what it's about. I don't have to ask questions the entire time.
Mhm.
Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, or it's like, hey, yeah, like that 8-year-old that watched, maybe the Bears are his new favorite team because that was the first football game that he watched with his dad or mom or brother or cousin or whatever. But it's smart. I think there's a couple years ago is, I mean, still even prevalent now is, the people were looking to access China. The NBA made a big China initiative. The Pac-12 made a huge China initiative, and that you're seeing, kind of I feel like the NBA has been doing a good job of being on the cutting edge and making it more of a global game and accessing different audiences globally. But yeah, I mean, those are the two big things: is kind of that younger audience, new users, and then also going global and accessing brand new markets outside of the U.S.
Yeah. Uh, and then for, aside from, talking about uncertainty and, details of sports and whatnot, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? Being working for the university for sports, it's, I'm working and, working for the teams, the women's basketball team, the football team, marketing, recreation. And then I go back and, do my homework and then hang out with friends after. As a sports professional or industry professional, what do you do for fun? I mean, because you go to work and then you come home, and
Yeah.
do you still think about work? Do you do your homework per se, or
Mhm.
do you kind of
That,
turn your brain off?
it's a great question, and I think kind of to be that sport professional and to be any professional. I mean, you can never really kind of turn your brain off. But I mean, kind of you also have to, right? So like for me, like what I like to do, I mean, shoot, basically what I like to do is stuff that you really can't do anymore, unfortunately. So like playing pickup hoop with my friends, or going out to a movie or going out to a restaurant or hanging out with friends and getting together. Really can't do that, which has been difficult. But like golfing, kind of picked up golf over the last year. But just trying to stay active. I mean, honestly, just trying to stay active. And like I said, gyms being shut down, that's pretty tough. But just being around sports, any sports, whether it be football, basketball, soccer, golf, anything. Honestly, is kind of what I do to relax and unwind and all that stuff. But also, I'm in advertising, so for me, like my eyes and ears are kind of always open. And anytime I'm watching a game, if it's a local game, the Mariners on Root Sports, I'm looking, hey, who's advertising during the broadcast? Who are prospects that I can call on? Who are what are some kind of cool ways that they're doing their ads and commercials that I haven't thought of? Can I kind of pick and choose and pick and steal different ideas? So I'm always looking, I'm always open, and whether I'm driving around and I see billboards or advertisements, or I'm listening to different radio stations, or I'm watching TV, I'm always kind of just in tune to kind of like the athletic side of it. So I think you'll find that in any industry you get into, it's like you always kind of pick up tiny different things. Like for example, like I work in operations for that golf championship, right? So you watch a golf you watch a golf match on TV, but then like for me, I was just watching, okay, like how are like the bleachers built? Like how is the crowd control being handled? How is the security being handled? What is kind of the back of house standpoint look like in terms of like, the fencing and the mesh cover? Like, does it look like, does it look professional? Does it look done? So, any industry that you get into, I'm sure, with you too, like you just kind of pick up on tiny little things and you're like, oh my gosh, like, only the people in that industry can see it, which is pretty funny. And it's kind of a cool part of the job.
Yeah, no, exactly. Working, for marketing and then women's basketball, you can just, when you watch a broadcast of a basketball game, when there was actually fans in the stands and stuff, if you just kind of look in detail around the court, you can kind of see the positions, for their marketing department or whoever is doing game presentation for them. You can kind of just pick them out because of what they're doing and what they're focusing on. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's been difficult a little bit to just, because I loved watching sports and I still do, but it's just different now. It's not
Yes.
of, it's not a passion for, it's not necessarily, I didn't really lose the passion for the game. It's just difficult to enjoy the game as much.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but there's pros and cons to that because, I can I'm watching a game with someone, I can just say, oh, that look at what's going on here. Like this person's this person's that. So it's interesting, but it's also just a different viewing experience.
Yeah, it's like the game within a game,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of just feel like you're nerding out, but everybody does it.
Yeah, yeah. And then also, kind of going along with you were talking about earlier, professors that you talk to and that you still talk to. What is something that you learned in these sport management classes that you took that sticks with you today, whether that's in your undergrad or your master's degree that you got?
Mhm. That's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of different things. Just from kind of what I do right now with marketing. A sport law. I don't really do sport law. That doesn't really apply that much to my job, but I mean, I just kind of apply it to like different things that I see. I remember Dr. Levin's I think my comprehensive exam question to pass grad school was kind of dealt on a similar situation with like the Mason Rudolph Miles Garrett situation. I think it was kind of similar hypothetical example, and it was like look at this situation from a sport law perspective. So when that actually happened in real life last year, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I know exactly what could happen potentially. I mean, it's a good question. I still remember the first time, we went over sales and cold calling in Dr. Crawford's class. And I was like, I hate this. I was like, I don't want to do this. I was like, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to read a script. I don't want to cold call. I don't want to get past the gatekeeper or anything like that. But, to me, and that's literally what I do now. And, I think it just kind of stands out. It's just, they do a really good job, the sport management department of you kind of get an experience in every single different aspect, right? You kind of get a taste in every single aspect. Like Dr. Leachin, I mean, we would talk a lot about, social media. Dr. Reed, we would talk about, kind of same thing with marketing and all that stuff. So, stuff stands out. I mean, it's difficult to kind of pinpoint, what exactly, but I mean, stuff just kind of stands out all the time just because it was such like an overarching, education, and then kind of covered basically everything that you would see, everything that you would see or kind of be prepared for, working in sports.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I'm kind of seeing that of they teach you everything, but you're the final piece to that kind of puzzle of they'll give you a little bit of everything, but it's your choice whether you actually, want to advance your career and, use what they tell you to be tools. What they tell you is not going to just instantly help you, but I think it's more of tools. Like you were saying with Dr. Ree with marketing, it was difficult. Like I thought his class was very difficult. I mean, but it was also very enjoyable. Once you get to the end, after you're just like, wow, that was very hard, or Dr. Wong's management class, all difficult classes, but you realize how much you learn after you're done with the class. When you're in it, you don't really understand, like, why am I learning this? I know that, or, when they talk about, different channels of marketing and different segments, you're like, I know what that means. I know that kind of background from other, marketing 360 from the university, or, management 301 from the university, but it takes it a step further, what I realized. And you don't really understand what they are until you are done with those classes. And I think you really find out what you didn't learn when you do your capstone, when you do the event management class with Levins.
Yep. Yeah. Dr. Wong, I mean, he did the event management class when I was in school, that 468, I think. And then even, his grad school class, that was one of the most difficult classes I took. But it was basically just kind of developing a framework to look at problems and kind of solve problems based on, kind of the framework that you look at it. So like you said, I mean, that's a great point. Like when I was doing it, I was like, so far into the forest, I couldn't see the trees. But then like, the further you get away from it, and then you kind of actually have some real world experience to it, you're just like, oh my gosh, now it totally makes sense. And like, I'm glad I had that experience, because now, like, I know exactly kind of what it was talking about. I know kind of the lessons that I learned, are happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like planting the seed for, shade for the future. I mean, that's kind of what it's doing, where you don't really see it until you get into the industry, which is difficult to find out, but I think it pays off. It pays dividends in the future.
For sure.
And then kind of on that, what is some advice you'd give to sport management graduates right now? And then, ones that have recently graduated that are still struggling to find jobs and, break into their career?
Yeah. Number one piece of advice, man, and Ryan, this is how you and I met, is networking. Is network, and use your connections and use the Cougar kind of network and connections and all that stuff. I mean, that's the thing, is like, Ryan, you reached out to me and I was like, yes, for sure. Like, I'll do it. I'll help any way that I can. I'll help you. I help, kind of the program, anything. I mean, that's kind of what this program was built on, is the backbone, is just networking and Cougs helping Cougs. And that's why, going to Washington State is such a different and unique experience, because, you'll have a network for the rest of your life, professionally, personally, like anywhere. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I've reached out, to a brand new client, and I realized that they went to WSU, and we just have a relationship right off the bat, and it's something, yeah, we want to do business together. There's literally, an organization here on the West Side that is called Cougs First, and it's literally built on the premise of Cougar-owned businesses, working with Cougar grads. So it's literally, you're going to do business with someone, it might as well, be a Coug. So, I mean, network. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to reach out to anybody in the Cougar network, because I guarantee you, I mean, more often than not, it's going to be met with, reception. It's going to be held with, hey, I'll try to help you out as much as I can, or I'll help you. Hey, I can't help you, but I know somebody who can. Let me introduce you to so and so. So that's kind of the number one. Especially in Pullman, kind of use that network right there. I mean, you have a Division I Pac-12 school right there, in the athletic department. I mean, you can have an informational interview, sit down, send somebody an email. If you want to get into marketing, send the marketing, director an email and say, hey, my name's so-and-so. Just want to pick your brain for a little bit. Can I take 30 minutes of your time, or can I take you out to lunch, or can I buy you coffee, or something like that? And just network and talk. And when you come to those meetings, obviously be prepared, do your homework, and kind of present yourself in a professional manner, because all that stuff is going to stick out, and it's going to help them. If you're looking to get a job there, then they'll kind of put in the back of their mind, okay, this person is serious, I'll kind of keep their resume, and they can use their connections, because they have connections all over the country, all over the region, all over the state. So it's just, I mean, the power of networking is just so strong. So network as much as you can, reach out to people on LinkedIn, even ask kind of your professors, say, hey, do you know anybody that, works for the Seahawks or works for the Mariners or something like that? And I guarantee you, we do, just because that Cougar, sport management network is so strong. So, definitely, reach out to as many people as you can, make those connections, and also be like, tell them what you're looking for. Tell them what you want to do. Tell them, hey, I want to work in operations, or I want to work in marketing, or I want to work in sales, and ask real questions. And, because they'll give you a truthful answer. Hey, like, do you recommend, working in this? Oh, no, actually, I didn't like it, but, maybe I'll introduce you to somebody else who liked it. So, really be kind of intentional with how you position yourself and what you want to do, and kind of your goals, and all that stuff. And also, don't be afraid to try stuff, kind of, this is your time. Like I said, did those internships all over the country, and I had a great time, and I learned a lot of good stuff about me. And it helped me grow a lot. And I don't think I'd be here where I am right now without those times. So, definitely network and try things out.
Yeah. And then last question for you, pretty much you kind of answered it within that, but do you think you personally have had a benefit, or, a leg up over others in your field because of graduating from WSU sport management?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think, this is a long time ago. So 2008, when I was a freshman in college, I think WSU was one of the only schools on the West Coast definitely the Pacific Northwest that even had a sport management program. I know a couple schools have added one. I think UW has a master's, maybe. I don't know if they have an undergrad, but just at that time, it was one of the only ones that had it. So, we even got students from around the area or from around the region that like wanted to go to WC just for the sport management program. And there was even actually, with those budget cuts, there was even, a movement. I mean, sport management department almost got cut. And it took like legit like student activism to get it back off the chopping block. So that was pretty cool to see. And like even just now, like looking back on it, I mean, that was so cool to happen, because like I definitely wouldn't have had a degree. Like you wouldn't have had a degree. Like that impacted so many different lives. After the fact, and will continue to do so. So yeah, I think it definitely had a leg up. And even like in Pullman, I mean, you're such an advantage, like where you can work for the basketball team, you can work for the marketing department, you can get real Division I Pac-12 experience. I mean, right at your fingertips. Like that is so rare to have. So kind of use those resources and use those advantages. Because if you don't, it passes you by. Somebody else is going to use those advantages, and don't wait. I think that's kind of for me, is I would, in college, if I could do one thing differently, I would try to network from even as a sophomore, even as a junior, at undergrad. Don't be afraid to, reach out to people, network, and talk to them, and say, hey, like I'm thinking about getting into this. Like, what does that actually entail? Like, what does a marketing department actually do? What does a sales department actually do? Because I guarantee you'll find some stuff out that you didn't even know. So, that's kind of, but definitely, I mean, WC Sport Management definitely helped me get a leg up for sure, and it still does. It still continues to do so. Like I said, I still, get in touch with Cougar, Cougar grads, whether in department or not department, but I still keep in touch with a lot of people in the department. And you can still kind of have that networking too. It's like, if you know somebody that works at the University of Oklahoma, you can kind of branch out and get a job there. So, yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have today. Andrei, thank you again for coming on the podcast today. And I had a great time speaking with you. And I hope those that are listening are able to gain some valuable information about the uncertainty of the world we live in, and just kind of a sneak peek into the sport management department at WSU, if people are interested in it. But again, thank you so much, and appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Go Cougs.
Yep. Go Cougs.